I'm Justin Mott, and welcome to my home in Hanoi, Vietnam. And if you're new here, my channel is dedicated to all things photography from the perspective of a full-time working professional photographer. And I just want to thank you guys for being here. I am pleased to have you, and I appreciate your time. And why am I using all these pleasantries? Well, because today I'm going to give you guys some life lessons. I'm going to talk to you guys about money and manners, how to improve your life skills in these two categories. These are mistakes or personality flaws that I see a lot of you out there making. Especially you young people. I know I sound like a crotchety old dude, but trust me, you might not think you're this person, but a lot of you are. A lot of you are making these mistakes, and these mistakes will be detrimental to your business because your brand is not just your images, it's you and your personality. So today I'm going to go through some of these things and help you with these life skills. So let's talk money and manners. Alright guys, as always, don't forget to check out my online store at justinmott.com where I've got presets like this one that will not make you a better photographer, but that will add some pop to your images. I've also got prints that make great last minute gifts for Christmas, and I've also got my one-on-one sessions which also make great gifts. Anyone out there that wants to improve their photography skills, it's open to all levels of photographers and people that are interested in all genres of photography. And lastly, I know a lot of things, but it's Christmas time, a lot of things to sell. Lastly, I've got my Vietnam workshop, 5 spots left as of right now, as I'm filming this. So you can book that. That's for Northern Vietnam. It's a street and travel photography workshop that's going to take place in March of next year. You can pay the deposit. You can check out all that information at justinmott.com. That's going to be awesome. Don't miss your chance to book your slot right now. I'm not going to lie, I do judge people pretty quickly. I judge people when I see them in social situations, like going out for dinner and how they deal with a paycheck and how they treat the wait staff. I judge people on how they reach out to me right in the beginning via email or direct message and their manners there. You know, I get people that want to work for me or they want to intern for me. They want to be a director or they want to be a photographer for Mott Visuals for my commercial business, or I get people that want to intern for me, or I get people that want to shadow me, and like I'll get emails. It's almost like a demand. It's not very like nice and pleasant. So like right away I'll make a judgment right there. Like I don't want to work with this person. I don't want them working for me. Like if they write emails like that, they haven't matured yet. It's the same with everyday life, like watching people interact, like I said, even at a restaurant, how they deal with the wait staff, how they deal with the check, people offering to pay and things like that. So I make judgments, and you know, it's paid off well for me. I have good people that work for me, and I've made judgments based off their character. I'm more likely to hire someone based off of their character than I am based off of their work, because I can teach you how to become a better photographer. It's really hard, even though I'm trying today, but it's really hard to teach people character. It's really hard to teach people manners and how to be better with money, but I'm gonna try to today at least. And I know it's important not just for me, I see it with my clients all the time. I've done a ton of shoots where I'm reshooting after a photographer who has already been there, who made a lot of mistakes, and they didn't have a great personality, or didn't have a great attitude. Or it might not even be a reshoot, it might just be shooting after someone else, but if that photographer did have a good attitude, they would have been working with them again, but they didn't. They chose to work with me because that photographer wasn't great to work with, and didn't have manners, and was really cheap, and did try to nickel and dime them. So these things matter, trust me. Honestly, I'll even give you a story. My first big job for Intercontinental Hotels, who is now a marquee client of mine, when I shot for them, I was told this afterwards, I didn't know at the time, but basically they were trying out 2 video production teams. I had done a little bit of stills for them, but never video. So they had one video team doing a shoot at one hotel, we were doing a video at another hotel, and they were comparing us to see who's gonna get like a lot of their work in Southeast Asia after that. And later on, we got a ton of work, and I got to know the client well, and she told me the story. She's like, yeah, basically the other guy did a pretty good job. The other guy did a pretty good job. We're happy with the outcome, but not happy with how we got there. They said the guy was a pain to work with. He was stressed out all the time. He was yelling at the models. He showed his stress. He wore his stress. He wasn't polite to people. And even in the afternoon, like even little things, like in the afternoon, he had a beer at lunch, and they didn't like that. You know, I mean, some people think there's nothing wrong with that, but like I could still work fine off of one beer, but I wouldn't do that in front of a client unless they like absolutely insisted. Even then, I'd rather not do that. You know, I'd wait to drink when the shoot is completely done, not even during the week. So these little things matter. Trust me. It came down to like even then, because we were just starting out, their quality of video was right there with ours, but we were easy to deal with, and we were nice, and we were polite, and we weren't cheap, and we had good manners. And then another quick little story related to this, just to sort of like pound it in your face how important this stuff is. I was recently on a really big shoot for a Fortune 500 company. I can't name the company because I did sign an NDA, but It was a big shoot, and the client was there remotely, and during the break, I kind of walked into them talking about me. I don't know if they didn't know that the audio was on, but we were supposed to be on break. I was having a coffee, I was walking by, and I heard them discussing me. It was my first shoot for them, and they were like, yeah, when we do a shoot, we don't even know the outcome yet. We've seen some of the pictures because I was shooting tethered, but it's not just that for our company. They were like, it's important that this person is part of the team. It's important that they have a great attitude. And they were just gushing about my positive attitude and how great it was to work with me and how easygoing I was and how I worked under pressure and how I worked quickly and I had good man, all these things. I was just like, I was so proud. I know I'm like patting myself, hugging myself and patting myself on the back, but that made me proud because I take pride in that the fact that I am easy to work with and I do have a great attitude. And it made me feel really good that they recognized that. And, they said, I see a lot of work in the future with him for us. So I'm like, wow, that was awesome. So it matters. It really matters. I'm telling you, my experience when I've been hired, it matters. And when I hire people, it matters. So here's some of the mistakes I see people make. Let's start with manners. First of all, manners, being on time. Super important to be on time. Even if you don't value being on time, like if you don't mind if someone's 5 or 10 minutes late for something, don't assume the person that you're working with doesn't value it. Because a lot of us do. I do. When people are late, when I meet them, even just casually, but in a professional atmosphere, when people are late, I judge them. I look at them differently. Like, sure, I have friends and family that are late a lot, but I don't work with them. I wouldn't want to work with them. I think it says a lot about how you manage your own time and how you respect other people's time. And I can't tell you, like, how many times I've worked with people and how much that did extend into like their work ethic and their professionalism. Like I had a guy work with us and he was late a couple mornings and he was like, no, it's a big deal. I'm like, the big deal is you're working for me, you're under my brand, and I take pride in that stuff. So I don't care if you don't care about it, I care about it. And even if the client, you don't think the client cares about it, doesn't matter, I care about it. But a lot of clients, even if they don't say it, they do care about it. Be on time for everything. If you're an assistant, if you're a photographer, any level, wherever you're at. You're dealing with a client, you're dealing with a photographer, you're dealing with a team meeting, a Zoom meeting, an in-person meeting, even on scouting day. Be on time. Better yet, actually be early. And none of that BS about traffic or you didn't know the elevator or you couldn't get a buggy. I'm talking all in like hotel terms because that's what I shoot a lot. And I've heard all these excuses. Calculate for that kind of stuff. Set 2 alarms for things if you're the kind of person that snoozes or forgets. That's what I do. I'm not a very well organized person, so I have my own workarounds. Like I leave things in places so I don't forget them. I set like multiple alarms in the morning so that I don't make that mistake. Whatever you got to do to work around it, be on time. Respect people's time. The next thing is just sort of basic please and thank yous, just those kind of manners. Say thank you to people. Say please to people. Don't demand stuff. It doesn't matter at what level they're at, too. Like you're talking to your assistant. People watch that stuff, too, as you're a photographer. Like the client watches how you treat their team, and they watch how you treat your own team. And they're going to make a lot of judgments about you on how you treat your team. And so, I shouldn't have to tell you this. Luckily, I was raised by my mom who had great manners and taught us things like hold the door for people, help people in need. But general please and thank yous are important every single time. Acknowledging mistakes, that's another big one. Like if you made a mistake, admit it. Even if it's, again, to your assistant. You made a mistake, say you're sorry, admit it. If you were wrong, don't be so prideful that you can't admit your mistakes. And to a client, same thing. Say you were wrong. Admit your mistakes. Say you're sorry. That matters to me. When people make a mistake and they apologize for it and they own up to it, that means the world to me. And that says a lot about your character. It also means a lot to me the other way. I lose a lot of respect for people that don't own up for their mistakes and people that don't, take the time, even when things are stressful, to say please and thank you. So thank you for listening to me. And then in addition to that, even after the shoot, like I always send a follow-up email to the client directly and thanking them and telling them to thank their entire team for the hard work. When we do hotel shoots, so much goes into it. It's not just the marketing team that we're dealing with. The marketing team has to liaise with the F&B, with the housekeeping, all the different teams there. They have to work with them, and they do a lot of work behind the scenes that the photographer doesn't see to prepare for the shoot. So I thank them. I thank them in person when I can, and afterwards I send an email and I thank them. I thank them for the time, I thank them for the professionalism, I thank them for the hard work. Acknowledgement, that's important. We all want it, right? So give it as well. The next thing is do the right thing, not the easy thing. A lot of photographers want to take shortcuts and things, and that's where like being cheap comes in, but I'll talk about that later. But I'll give you a story that really sums this up. We had a guy that was doing some editing for us. He shot a video for us and he was doing the editing, and then he missed the deadline. And we don't do that for my business. We actually calculate time in case you're gonna miss the deadline that we can do it ourselves, because we like to do everything in-house. But this was a job, we were kind of maxed out with people, we were maxed out with teams in other locations, so he was kind of new to us. He did a job, he missed the deadline, kind of unapologetically missed the deadline, and then we had to hire someone else out of pocket to edit the entire video to get it to our client on time. And so we lost money on the shoot, but again, our reputation's more important. So there's a couple little things to unpack there. And because we're polite, we did offer, and we meant it, we offered to pay him still his full salary for the job, and he took it, but that's the wrong move. What he should have done is not accept it. I mean, I wouldn't have. I know people say like, oh, you shouldn't have offered, but for me, it was kind of one of those things like, it wasn't a test at the time, but it worked out to be a great test for us because we knew right then, based on his character of accepting the money for the full job that he didn't complete, that we didn't want to work with him anymore. And we didn't. And, we found other people that were great and can meet deadlines and are on time. and it was the right move. I mean, person like that doesn't have the character that we want in our business. It doesn't have, they don't have the professionalism or the character that we want to represent our business. And so it was a great way to learn that. I wish I noticed that right away with this person, although I kind of did see some other signs because they were rather cheap, and that was an important lesson there. You might say like, whoa, he won, right? He got the money. Well, but no, like we had tons of jobs after that he could have shot for us. And not even just jobs that he could have shot for us, but I could have referred him for video shoots and photo shoots. And I didn't. I won't. Like, people ask me all the time, and I have been here a long time. I have a long list of people and a lot of shoots that I can't do, and I can refer people and get them a job like that. And I wouldn't, because it's not like out of anger to him, but I can't risk my reputation because I don't trust their reputation. So always think about that. Don't always do the easy thing. Do the right thing. Now I'm going to talk about money. I mean, man, am I surrounded by cheap expats living here in Hanoi? I mean, living here in Southeast Asia, I just feel like I complain about it so much that I am sick of myself complaining about it. I'm complaining about myself complaining about it. I'm just surrounded by so many cheap expats, and with that obviously comes cheap photographers as well. So like, just in general, don't be cheap, but I'll give you some examples here. But man, like sometimes you just don't know with people. You'll meet people with like good manners, right? Or they seem like they have good manners, or they know enough to like show they have good manners. But when it comes to money, they're just like way off, And my friend Andre used to say this line to me when I bartended. He was one of the patrons. He used to say, man, Justin, money makes people funny. I'm like, yeah, it does. Because you wouldn't expect it with people sometimes. You'd expect them based on their manners, based on their personality to not do this stuff. But when it comes to money, my goodness, like, don't be cheap. And even though it's so hard in the beginning of your career because you're not making a lot of money, it's so hard to not be cheap, don't do it. In the end, it doesn't pay off. In the end, it pays off. You don't have to be like overly generous, but just don't be cheap. Like, think about the guy with the editing fee, taking it. He was being cheap, right? And look, at long term, didn't pay off because tons of jobs that I could have had him shoot for us, or even just jobs I could have referred for him to do himself, all gone because it was cheap. And that extends over, like, photographers always think like, oh, I'm small business and I'm working for a big business and a big shoot. They should pay for the other stuff. I'm like, first of all, never assume with money. Never assume. Like, if you and I, you right there, if we go out for a drink 10 times and I pay every single time, even if we don't work together, I just pay and I insist on it, assume the 11th time I'm not going to pay. Always offer to pay each time. I mean, that's a minimum, but never assume, never expect. And just because someone makes more money than you, you shouldn't assume that they're going to pay. And the same goes for working for a big company. So when I've shot for big companies, like at their hotels, we might go to the hotel bar when the shoot's over, and people say, oh, they can just put it on their company card and expense it. Like, sure, that may be true, but I'm not going to assume that. And I'll go out of my way to make sure I pay, especially if they paid the last time. But often I'll sneak out, pretend I'm going to the bathroom, and I'll pay. And even though it's a hit, and I might not have calculated that into my expenses, and it might be like sometimes a big team might be a few $100 or something like that. It means something to people, and these clients, like, they take note of that stuff. People take note of that. Like, oh, he wasn't cheap. Oh, he made sure he paid. Oh, that says a lot about his character. People pay attention to those little things. And I know I pay attention to this stuff too when I'm the client. I've hired photographers. We've done big shoots. When I used to have my wedding photography business, I would have multiple photographers on a shoot. And afterwards, it was customary, like, I would take them out for beers. But like, the good friends, the ones that I wanted to work with more, were the ones that still always offered, even though every time I paid, they was offered. And the cheap ones never even reached for the wallet. And then even the really cheap ones, sometimes I'd see them like socially out, like not related to a shoot, and they wouldn't even reach for the wallet. I'm like, what am I now, like a sugar daddy? I'm taking you out for drinks? And like, I honestly had friends like that. They weren't friends really, because I stopped hanging out with them. And actually, when you think about it, I'm their client. I'm getting them work. They should be taking care of me. But I would never expect, nor should they, and they should never expect, especially outside of a work environment, to pay. So again, I learned a lot about their character, and I stopped working with them. It doesn't mean you can't be friends with these people. I mean, some of them I'm friends with, but it means I don't want to work with them. And while I'm on the topic of being cheap, like another thing, non-photography related is, but I see it a lot here in Vietnam, I'm like, oh, don't do this with people. Like, if you ever go to a party or ever go to a dinner, or like you might have this with a client, if I can relate it to a photography business, the client might invite you over, bring a bottle. The sort of the general rule of thumb is bring double what you're gonna drink. So if you think you're gonna drink a whole bottle of wine, bring 2. If you don't drink at all, still bring a bottle, or bring a dish and a bottle. But like, don't ever show up to a party, don't ever show up to a dinner party or any party at all, at any age, empty-handed. Just don't. And the last thing I'll talk about here is just kind of having a short or a selective memory throughout your career. Like, that's something I see photographers do all the time. Again, I'm really talking about my community here, but I do see it in other communities. I've had friends vent about this stuff. Like, having a short memory is like, don't forget when a client gave you a bunch of work and then maybe they've got a lower budget for another job, but they've always fell within your budget, or always worked within your budget on other shoots. Like, remember that. Remember what they've done for you. And the same goes for other photographers and how you treat them. Like, I've had photographers that I've referred tons of work for, and they never paid it back, like ever, not even once. And I've had photographers that I've basically given a playbook on how to work here, like how to do their invoices. I've spent time with them, I've sat down with them, taught them how to bill for a travel day, how to bill for a scouting day, how to actually do their invoices, how to work with their deposits and contracts. And then it comes time for doing a shoot with me and they're nickel and diming me over some stupid little fees for $5. And man, again, selective short memory. Don't you remember all the other stuff? I didn't do it because of that, but maybe factor that in a little bit when you're being cheap or trying to get an extra $10 for something like that. I mean, really, I know it sounds like I'm just surrounded by horrible people. I do have a lot of great friends that don't do this stuff, but I've just come across a lot of cheap expats. I think a lot of them make their way out here. In a way, that's a good thing for me because a lot of them have really bad character and bad business sense, and it helps my business that they don't have these skills. But it's hard to watch, and it's even more challenging to actually deal with them and do business with them. I can't tell you how many people, I've heard people trash talk me behind my back, people that have really helped. Honestly, I built a business foundation for a lot of photographers here that steal it all the time, whether they do it directly by me helping them one-on-one, or they've looked at my blogs or my YouTube channel, mimicked what I've done, and used my business model to help them make money. But then when it comes time to do me the smallest favor, no. So don't have a short memory, don't have a selective memory. Remember where you stand, remember what people did for you. These are all basic characteristics that any good person should have, but I just see a lot of people out there that don't have them. So I wanted to express these things to you guys, because I don't want you to make those mistakes. And maybe you're young, and maybe that's part of maturity, maybe that's part of who I am now as a 44-year-old, but I did have a lot of these skills early on and even in my 20s, but that's because of the way I was raised. In the end, people with good manners, good people in general, they prevail. I know you don't think so, but they prevail because they benefit from the ultimate marketing tool, word of mouth. And that's free. And that's part of you. That's part of your brand, your pictures and your personality. That's your brand right there. So work on it, get better. If you are guilty of any of these things, it's not too late. Work on it, improve. That's it for today, guys. Don't forget to check out my website at justinmott.com, where I've got my presets, I've got prints, I've got my one-on-one sessions, and I've got my workshop. Don't forget to sign up for my workshop, which will take place in March 2023. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to have a wonderful day.